hear ye, wheels of souls, ladies, birds, and serfs. I will tell you the true story of warriors without fear, but with a few regrets. Charging, the enemy with lance at the ready, except when they engage in violent and bloody hand-to-hand combat. And courtiers sometimes, if they feel like it. They're wheels of souls. You've probably guessed it, today the knights are coming. He fascinates many of us, and rightfully so, but he is not limited to the romantic image we have of him. Far from it. The reality of medieval warriors is often forgotten. Above all, they were warriors, and that's where their story begins. It doesn't always match what we like to think. So, first question, when we talk about knights of the Middle Ages, what are we really talking about? It's a more complex concept to define than you might think, since not all authors agree on it. Nevertheless, there is a common foundation that seems obvious. A medieval knight must first and foremost be a warrior on horseback. Then, the concept evolved over time, as I'm going to show you. Second question, where do knights come from? There are many theories about the origins of knights. Some theories believe that the concept of knights dates back to ancient Rome and consider that the social class of Roman equites, sometimes translated as Roman knights, are the origin, although a very distant one, of medieval knights. Some prefer linking Carolingians to horsemen. For those unfamiliar with Carolingian, this refers to a period in French and European history ruled by the dynasty established by Charlemagne's father. The period in question spans from the 8th century AD to the late 10th century. These hypotheses are not entirely contradictory, and the uninterrupted flow of history allows for the possibility of their intersection. The crucial aspect is to place the knight concept in its proper context, the Middle Ages. The concept of the knight has evolved and been interpreted differently over time. However, the medieval knight is typically discussed from the 10th or 11th century, depending on the source. However, the knight of that time is not the one you would naturally think of. These men, far from being noble and proud warriors driven by their ideals, courage, and faith, are professionals specialized in fighting on horseback, with a reputation for brutality whose actions hardly shine compared to their fellow soldiers. They often come from relatively humble backgrounds, though they are not poor, because you had to be able to equip yourself and have a horse to be a knight. It was during this first period until the early 12th century. Did you know that? This coincides with the Crusades, when knights were warriors, mounted but not necessarily noble, regardless of a dubbing ceremony. The ceremony was almost always secular in the 10th century. It later became religious, accepting violence to defend the Christian church and God, which was previously excluded. My friend Hirocom explains this process in his video that provides context for the Crusades. Link is in the description. It's from this period that we start talking about Miles Christi, which means soldier or knight of Christ, depending on the context surrounding the word. Bernard de Clairvaux authored a book on this subject. So you see, the church gets involved and tries to channel the violence of its warriors by giving them the role of defender of the Christian faith and its ideals. But not only that, they are also made protectors of the people, of God, and of the church's property. These elements theoretically involve respecting certain values and ethics, which they may struggle to enforce initially. That's the least we can say, but it will nevertheless exalt the condition of the knight. In the 12th century, the situation evolved due to multiple factors, marking a new phase. The main thing is that the nobility, educated and instilled with certain values, such as honesty, morality, integrity, and respectability, appropriated knighthood. Going forward, with few exceptions, noble descent is increasingly required to become a knight. You can sense the tips of their proud noses poking out, those jousters and gallants. Well, you're right. The phenomenon occurs as the balance between nobility, clerical power, and central authority shifts, pushing each to reevaluate their role in society. Moreover, this period of unrest coincides with the emergence of epic poetry in vernacular languages and the concept of courtly love. Epic poems, like the famous Song of Roland, thus highlight examples of knights with various profiles and virtues, but always idealized and exemplary, whom nobles want to emulate. Meanwhile, Courtly love highlights stories of a consensual love between a man and a woman, where the man, respectful of his lady's desires, wins her over through his physical prowess, articulate words, and refined intentions. Make no mistake, it's a pretty modern concept at a time when the relationship between men and women was far from balanced. Moreover, the emphasis on a knight's loyalty to his lord, that is, the feudal bond, allowed the nobility to function. Naturally, the concept found its place among the ideals of knights. Despite this, not every knight was a vassal throughout their rich history. Some, although not the norm, were even mercenaries. When I tell you that the concept is evolving and open to interpretation, here's another example. So it's at the end of this phase that the knight, or at least his ideal, becomes the hero we know today and becomes much more than just a professional warrior. The perfect knight is from then on a model of mainly Christian virtue, courage, and loyalty to his lord. Chivalry enters its third, more codified phase of development from the late 12th century through the 13th century, and it will see just as many great knights whose stories have reached us, such as William Marshall, and fascinating treatises such as the Livre de l'Ordre de Cavalleria, the Book of the Order of Chivalry by Raymond Lullet, or Raymond Lull. Forgive the pronunciation. This codification, inherited from the previous two phases, makes the knight, on the one hand, a mounted warrior, formidable and decisive, just like at the Battle of Bouvines, where the French knighthood was key to the victory of the Kingdom of France against the Holy Roman Empire and its allies. And, on the other hand, a moral example for the society of that time. From then on, people spoke of the Golden Age of Knighthood. During the 14th and 15th centuries, these warriors, terrified at the thought of being called cowards, motivated by honor and their own glory, are just as proud as they are undisciplined. The 100 Years' War and the French disasters illustrate this well. The knights are no longer as decisive on the battlefield as they used to be during this conflict. While the English are quite willing to accept a less chivalrous but more rational analysis of their situation, the French knights, proud and loyal to the chivalric ideals developed in the past, are defeated. As tactics and weapons evolve in this era, chivalry starts to decline. Adapting their equipment, 15th century knights become human tanks, difficult to stop once in motion. Despite these changes, it is at the very end of the 15th century and the beginning of the 16th that knights as such experienced their final hours. The arrival of firearms was a major factor. Still, the symbolic value of the knight persists and develops over the ensuing centuries, notably through the creation of chivalric orders that are more honorary than military in nature. This is the legacy we have inherited today, which you have likely noticed. Medieval knights have profoundly impacted history, and their influence persists in modern civilization. Not to mention the religious orders of knights, there is still much to say about them, from their lifestyle and favorite pastime outside of military campaigns, especially tournaments, to the knighting ceremony and the path to becoming a 13th century knight. But that would be starting a new fascinating topic. Before leaving our castle, don't forget to give a blue thumbs up and subscribe, while also activating the little bell so you don't miss our next adventure. See you very soon.